Hi, good morning, folks. I just need to put this video out just to explain in great detail exactly what's going on, why I posted the videos, and of the obvious corruption that's going on in Denton County. Denton County District Attorney's Office, the Little Elm Police Department, the Frisco Police Department, the Colony Police Department, this whole Denton County as a whole, and how the if you end up getting caught, how you get steamrolled by unlawful activity. So real fast, just shout out to Junkyard News and to Supreme Decisions. And Junkyard, I know you like my shirt, my sweatshirt. Forget the Chiefs. But anyways, on a serious note, so on June 26th of last year, I was at my home and a friend and I had a disagreement. It was not domestic, no matter how much they tried to make it domestic. It wasn't a domestic issue whatsoever. And she was trying to leave. Police officers, she called the police officers. They came by. She said in the video that she was just trying to leave. They wouldn't let her leave. Well, a police officer came into my home after I told him he could not come in. There was no warrant. There's no probable cause. There was no domestic issue whatsoever. I told him he couldn't come in. He came in anyway. Interrogated me inside my kitchen. But that video's been out there. It's on Audit the Auditor. There's probably 500,000 views on that. And basically, or simply, he arrested me because I would not show him identification in my home, in my kitchen. He asked for identification. I told him no. I don't have to give it to him. I wasn't involved in a crime. And I asked him simply, "Am I under arrest?" He said, "No, you're being detained." I'm like, "Well, I'm not showing my identification." And he said, "I said, if I'm accused of a crime," he goes, well, I said, "I'm committed a crime." He says, "Well, I don't know that." I'm like, "Well, I do know that." And he's like, "Well, I'm going to talk to my partner." I'm like, "We'll talk to him." So he arrested me clearly for not showing my identification. He said it 17 times total. I spent 27 hours in the Little Elm jail. The person who was in my home, they left her there unsecured, even though she was not on the lease clearly. This officer came back to my home. He took me to jail, arrested me, took me to jail. He arrested me for defiance of authority was the reason behind the arrest, defiance of authority. So took me to jail. Never told me why. He said defiance or whatever, but I kept asking him details he wouldn't tell me. So he took me to jail, dropped me off, and I overheard the sergeant telling him, "You can't arrest him for not identifying." And so he left me in jail, went back to my house where the person was there, unsecured, not on the lease, which he even said to her, "Well, if you're not on the lease, technically you can't evict you because you don't technically live here." So they left her there. And so he went back and solicited a complaint. I was arrested at 10 o'clock in the morning, and the complaint wasn't signed until 1:23 in the afternoon. That case, the assault threat was dismissed. The fact that they charged it was ridiculous because there was no probable cause for warrantless arrest, which makes the arrest null and void altogether. But they still chose to prosecute me on that Little Elm in their little cute court. Decided to prosecute that Class C misdemeanor. So I was in jail for 27 hours. Didn't know why per se. I had family try and call and bail me out and find out what the bail's gonna be because I had to go to work that afternoon. They wouldn't tell me. They said, we can't set the bail amount until you see the judge. Can't see anything until you see the judge. Till you see the judge. Till you see the judge. Till you see the judge. So 25 hours later, I'm sitting there in Little Elm jail, and this person who got there after I did, was released. And so I asked the jailers, "Hey, what's going on? How's this guy getting released and I'm not?" She's like, "Well, he got here before you did." I'm like, "No, he didn't." And so they went and checked and did their thing. They went and did their thing and checked, and they realized their mistake that I had not. He was not there before I was. So 3 hours later they released me. So I walk home just furious, and it was brewing in my head. My upset. I was upset, but I couldn't quantify. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't quantify or articulate why it was wrong. I had no idea. This is literally a year later. This was a year ago, on June 26, 2019. And I'm a fine dining server by trade. I'm a professional server. You ask me about wines, I can tell you. You ask me about any kind of particular steaks, I can tell you. But the law, I was clueless, and how to and about my own rights and civil rights and the Bill of Rights and the Corporation Doctrine and the Supremacy Clause. Those all words were not in my vocabulary a year ago today. And so I started digging. And I asked, and I called people, asked them to help me. They wouldn't help. And I asked, the police officers, what would they arrest me for? Nobody would help me. And so I wrote a complaint down. I filed a complaint with the chief of Little Elm, and I thought my civil rights were violated. And I also stated that it was racial profiling, because that person that was in my house was Caucasian, and they left her there. And so were both of the officers. And so in my complaint, I said, my civil rights were violated, and also believe it was a false arrest. It was also racial profiling, because I don't have to do it for myself. So when I went and turned in the complaint, the chief of police, Rodney Harrison, laughed at me and told me I didn't know the law, that I have to identify myself. And I was like, well, I don't think I do. Well, you don't know the law. I've been doing this for 27 years. I know you. Blew me off. So in their internal investigations report, which I have, the internal affairs, the IA officer is in his report to the chief, Harrison. The IA officer's name is Lieutenant Compton, who I'll talk about here shortly, who broke my right wrist, said to me that he, in his report, stated 7 times in his report that the officer was repeating what I was asking him, because I kept asking him as they're transporting me to Little Elm Jail, what did you arrest me for? You didn't show your identification. What did you arrest for? You didn't show your ID. You didn't show your ID. You didn't show your identification. He said it specifically 6 times, because I have his body camera. I also have the body camera for inside the car. I have the body camera, the camera footage from inside the jail. Anyways, so Lieutenant Compton, in his internal affairs investigation, said 7 times that I did not. The reason why I was arrested for not identifying myself, and after further investigation, I was ultimately found to have assault by threat, which is a crock, which they went and solicited. And at the end of his conclusion, our conclusion, we find, imagine this, Officer Ferguson was not guilty of any crime. He didn't violate any of your civil rights. He's completely justified in his reasoning, blah, blah, blah. And he turns into the chief. So the chief, I'll read it to you. The chief's response officially was, here we are. It says here, Mr. Stark, this is from Chief Rodney Harrison, Little Elm Police Department official department head, Little Elm Police Department official letterhead. This letter is to follow up to our conversation via the telephone. You requested that I review your arrest from October 13th and your request for medical attention. Hold on one second. That's the wrong one. This is my original complaint. Here we are. Mr. Stark, I am in receipt of a complaint you filed with the captain of the Field Operations Division. This is, it's all official. Their official version. Dated July 17, 2019. The incident happened on June 26, 2019. Sergeant Compton, who heads the Internal Investigation Unit, he's now a lieutenant, by the way, got promoted, investigated the matter and turned it over to me on August 6, 2019 for review. Your written complaint alleged a civil rights violation, false arrest, and discrimination. I have reviewed the reports, your brief statement on the complaint form, and watched the video recording of your interaction with officers that led to your arrest. On the video, you were upset, argumentative, and did not cooperate with the investigation by providing your information upon request, which legally, I am not legally obligated to cooperate with the investigation at all. In my house, with no warrant. You were arrested and ultimately charged with assault by threat once the investigation was completed. Here's what's important. The judge that arraigned you found there was probable cause for your arrest, and according to the municipal court, you have a court date in the near future. Sergeant Compton found no evidence of a violation of a civil right or discrimination on the audio video of the incident. As a matter of fact, the officers treated you respectfully. This matter is closed with a finding of no policy violation. No further action will be taken. In our previous conversation, you asked what options you did, what would I have if not agree with my findings. I anticipate that you will not be happy with my decision, and I will refer you to the Dallas FBI office to seek their assistance involving your civil rights and discrimination if you choose to do so. Sincerely, R.W. Harrison, Chief of Police, Little Elm Police Department. R.W. Harrison, Rodney Harrison. He's a coward and a crook. Okay. Now, I was kind of curious after I read this, as he said to me that the judge that arraigned you found there was probable cause for your arrest, and according to the municipal court, you have a court date in the near future. Kind of curious, and I never saw the judge, not one time. Matter of fact, the reason why I was released is because I didn't see the judge in 24 hours, and And here's the proof of that. Unable to see judge within 24 hours was the reason why I was released from jail that day. So I call Rodney back and say, Rodney's curious. You said the reason why I was released was because I didn't see the judge. Yep, that's why. The judge said that we had probable cause to arrest you, and that's so forth. I said, Rodney is curious. Why was I released from your jail? I never saw the judge. Oh, that's a lie. And he hung up on me. Well, Rodney, Chief Harrison, calls me back. Mr. Stark, you know what? I was mistaken. You were right. We did not have probable cause to arrest you, and you did not see the judge. The reason why you were released is because you were released on a personal cognizance bond, a PR bond. And then he hung up on me. And then sent me a letter. Again, same. This letter is, Mr. Stark, this letter is to follow up on our conversation today, along with a letter you picked up from the police department dated August 6th. I was not correct in my statement that you had been arraigned by the judge and probable cause was found. You were released on a PR bond and have a court date scheduled to enter a plea. This does not change my findings that there was no policy violations during your arrest. This letter will be added to your complaint. If you have any further questions, please contact me, Rodney. Now, here's what's curious about this, folks. First of all, I didn't sign a PR bond. I am not eligible for PR bonds being a felon. I'm not eligible for them, period. But I was released on a PR bond. So he sent me that letter along with a copy of a PR bond that I am not eligible for and did not sign. But my signature's on it, curiously. I wonder how that happened. And I have a copy of that here as well, of a PR bond that I didn't sign. There's no information filled in. And guess what? That's my forged signature here. That's all forged here. And this is all forged information here. But if you look closely, look at the date of this PR bond being filled out. June 26th. I didn't get out of jail till June 27th. How did I sign a PR bond if I was still incarcerated and locked up? Rodney. Asked him about that, went to his police department and asked him about that. And I was talking to another officer, Lieutenant somebody, I don't remember his name. Rodney comes from downstairs finding out that I was talking to this police officer and forces me out of the building. Mr. Stark, get out, you need to leave. And it's chest bumping me. Out, get out. I'm like, I'm just asking about this. Just get out. He forces me out because this lieutenant didn't know anything about this. So he comes down and forces me out the building. Forces me out of the public building that I own, we own, okay? So that was June 26th. The man lies to me, puts on paper that I was released on a PR bond. I'm not eligible for them. Forges my signature. That's a forgery right there. Forgery. And then the date is June 26th. Didn't get out till June 27th. Did not get out of jail till June 27th. And that's on any kind of public docket you want to see, which I also have here because it says, the date on this one is on June 26th. Unable to see the judge. Not able to see the judge. That's why I was waiting after 24 hours. So there's that. Now, that was from the June 26th arrest. So 1 week later, on July 4th, I'm leaving my house, going to buy toilet paper. And I'm leaving my home, and I go around the block. I'm not even a quarter mile from my house. And I'm making a left turn, and lights come up out of nowhere. I'm like, what the heck? Lights are going on. Well, I pull over, and now mind you, there's 7 cop cars. There's 7 cars around me, okay? As I'm turning left. And I drive a 2012 Toyota Camry. That's spectacular, but it blends in with the neighborhood. So I'm turning this corner, and I get pulled over. And I'm like, wow. So the police officer comes up to me without Mirandizing me, because we all know that when you're pulled over, you're legally under arrest. It's called a custodial arrest. They have to let you know that. And more importantly, they have to have probable cause. They must have probable cause to pull you over. They must have probable cause that you committed a crime to even pull you over. And that's a law. And so I can tell you what law that is actually. Well, long story short, they had no probable cause to pull me over. And the officer's reasoning, Kennedy, I think was his name, his reason for pulling me over was, he said that he ran my plates, and he said that someone at some, someone at some time in this vehicle had driven it without proof of financial responsibility. Now, mind you how vague this is. Someone at some point operated this vehicle, operated it without financial responsibility, meaning somebody's driving this car without insurance. Not me, somebody. And so he asked for my driver's license and happened to be, suspended at the time. So, or no insurance also, and he arrested me for that. Now, he pulled me over without probable cause, and at the time I didn't have insurance, was just not required in the state of Texas because I am traveling, I'm not driving, I'm not doing commerce. And so he arrested me for that. And so arrested me again, I'm sorry, because I was already under arrest when the lights came on, because that's called a stop. So takes me to jail, goes through my car. As he's going through my car, I'm handcuffed and I'm in the back of another vehicle. This friend of mine walked over and because they call it a tow truck, and asked, "Hey, can I take his car home? He lives right there." And I'm like, "Yeah, can I take your car home?" They're like, "No," made her leave. Walk away, go away. Towed my car, which is a federal law. It was a federal offense. That's a federal crime, by the way. They can't just tow your vehicle unless it's involved in a crime. And they must articulate what crime it is, and you must be found guilty of that crime to take your property. That's a Fourth Amendment violation. I now know this. And so even when the police officer cuffed me and put me in the back of the car, and he's going to hit another police vehicle, he starts searching through my car. All the way just rampages it. And I'm thinking to myself, okay. So they call it inventory search. Well, in his inventory search, he mysteriously finds a paraphernalia and some content he thought he saw that he said it came back positive for cocaine and methamphetamine, where, mind you, those field drug tests are 14% accurate. And there's a quarterback who played football somewhere up north who got pulled over, and there was bird feces on his windshield, and that came up positive for cocaine on this field drug test. And this is on July 4th, which I have not been indicted on that at all. Everything from June 26th was dismissed. And so July 4th, they arrest me for that. And I've gone to jail for that. Now, fast forward to October 13th when I'm filming these guys. They come up to me. I'm filming these people because it's right on the block from my house. I come out of my car. I see there's this brother on the ground. Like I said, I'm involved with a civil rights organization. And there's three of them on the ground. And I'm walking up, showing my phone. I'm walking slowly and clearly, and it's broad daylight. I'm in a public sidewalk. I'm on a public sidewalk, and I'm filming it. I'm clear what I'm doing. Well, like I said, they come up to me. You're interfering with public duties, which Texas Penal Code 30.15 says interference can be verbal alone, and this is protected by the First Amendment. Filming police officers, Turner B. Driver, and Phil Turner's a friend of mine. Shout out to you, Turner. And they arrest me for that. Now, let's just say for what, and giggles, that I was interfering. Okay, that's a Class C misdemeanor. Was the interference, was the punishment worth the crime? Was that worthy of the force that was put on me? I mean, for interfering, for me filming them, and that Bartlett pulls up knowing my name, starts pointing a taser at my face, and I'm just standing there. I'm actually giggling. I was kind of amused that this was actually happening. And he calls me by name, which really shocked me. I'm like, "How do you know my name? How do you know my name, don't you?" And so Scott, that coward, that tyrant, Aaron Scott, comes and puts me in cuffs. And I'm asking him, "Hey, what are you putting me in cuffs for? What are you doing? What's going on?" Now, here's the law. U.S. v. Cortez. A law enforcement official must articulate particularized and objective basis for suspecting the particular person stopped with criminal activity. What did I do? Criminal activity, a crime is either damage to property, injury to person, or a felony committed in the presence of the police officer. None of that. And they go hands-on right away, which is a due process violation. Throw me to the ground, break my shoulder, three of them on top of me. I wasn't resisting, clearly. This, you saw in the video, I wasn't resisting. They're kicking my feet out, moving me around to make it look like I'm moving. But even so, resisting arrest is you're trying to escape or you're trying to hurt the officer, period. There's no ambiguity in the law at all whatsoever. So I was doing neither, but they decided to go hands-on, 3-on-1, with my hands behind my back, slam to the ground, break my shoulder. Officer Bartlett, that coward, has his knees on my neck. Lara, who's another coward, has my feet and my wrist back and building back my thumb. And Scott, who's a coward, has his knees on my back, and Bartlett's choking me. He has me in some kind of weird hold where he's got his thumbs like on my pressure points, and he's burying my face into the ground. Sucked, but I couldn't breathe. I told him I can't breathe, and he's like, "Oh, you can talk, you can breathe," which has now been discounted. We all know this. So, and even so, the arrest was illegal because I did nothing illegal. I didn't commit a crime. It's clearly established law that you can film police officers. It's clearly established the First Amendment right. Fourth Amendment violation due to the illegal search and seizure, which is it's the supremacy clause. It's illegal, and so they arrest me, take me to jail, deny me medical attention, stick me in this tank. They strap me to this stupid chair. I posted a video for that as well, and they're laughing at me, and so. They tell me this officer died, who's an officer pulled up, said I spit on him, which his body camera video shows that I didn't. Laura's everything shows I didn't spit on this man. This is disgusting. I had saliva on my chin from when they're burying me and choking me. I couldn't breathe, and so he said I spit on him. And on his body camera video, and also Scott's body camera video, they're like, I don't see anything. He's like, I must have wiped it away, is what Dye says. And Scott, in his brilliance, in broad daylight, goes and looks at it with a flashlight. Let me see. Oh, I don't see anything. And so they both say there's no physical evidence whatsoever. Yeah, I'm still being indicted on felony public harassment charge. Felony. And there's no evidence of that. From an illegal arrest. I have a pending felony on a illegal arrest. Mind you, I have 10 total pending charges from Little Elm on 5 unlawful and illegal arrests. Because every reason why they've arrested me has been dismissed. The reason of contact has all been dismissed. But I still have 10 pending charges from the district attorney's office, namely the assistant district attorney Jesse Davis and Judge Shipman in the 16th Judicial Court in Denton County. That's spelled KKKOUNTY. They know that there's no reason but they're still persecuting me, And so 2 days later, on October 15th, they cut my water off on September 10th because they said that I owed them, X amount of dollars. Well, I was going to contest that because I got a notice on my door saying that I tampered with equipment. I don't understand that. So I had a $989.49 water. My water was a water bill. They said I must pay this amount before I get my water turned back on. But there's no proof or evidence that I tampered with any equipment. I don't even know where the equipment was. And there's no like voucher or bill. They say that's what you owe. So I called them and asked them about it, and they're like, well, you owe it to us. I'm like, how? I said, if there's if they say I tampered with equipment, there's some kind of proof or something, correct? They're like, well, no. Why would the person lie? I'm like, because it's a $500 fine. That's why. And so the city man or the municipality person tells me, well, we should have called the police. I'm like, actually, you sure should have, because there'd be some kind of proof that I did this. And so I'm like, well, how can you tell me that I owe you this money? They said, you owe it because we say you do. Well, that's ridiculous. So I go and file a complaint on October 2nd, and I'm speaking to the city manager, coward Matt Mueller. And as I'm walking in, I'm recording what I'm doing. I'm walking in public areas. This is all public access. It's their municipal offices are in the Little Elm Library. Public access. I'm there in the middle of the afternoon filming. Everything's public. I walk down the halls. I ask where Mr. Mueller's office is. They point me to him, and I'm going to speak to him about my ridiculous water bill. He's like, if I want any kind of proof, I could fill out a PIA, Public Information Act request, and that's what I did. Now I have this all taped that I'm videoed. He told me to do this, and this is what I did. And he would call me when this was all ready. So that was on October 2nd. Now, mind you, my water had been off for 3 weeks, okay? And so, I made do. And so I get a phone call the day after I get released from jail from filming them. And mind you, I have a broken shoulder. They refused me medical attention, which is a violation of the 8th Amendment. And they took me to Denton County, and the sheriffs refused to let me see a doctor, refused. I asked them, they said, they're busy doing life-threatening crap. Went. So so I stayed overnight in a single cell full of concrete with a grade 3 AC separation of my shoulder, which means the tendons are shredded, the collarbone and it's completely separated, which is I still have to this day. And so I got released on the 14th. I'm at my home. and I'm getting some rest. And then on October 15th, the following day, I get a phone call from them saying, "Hey, Mr. Stark, the request that you have is available," meaning my paperwork's ready. So I go up there and pick it up, and I don't record what I'm doing like an idiot. And so I go in the exact same way, exact same thing, and I'm talking to Mr. Mueller, and they hand me this piece of paper. Well, it's a Post-it note. A Post-it note with my information. This is how much you owe. This is what. I mean, it's a Post-it note. I'm like, where's the voucher? Where's the that I asked for? Well, we don't have it. You owe us because we say we do. So I'm talking to Matt, the city manager, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. You still have no proof that I messed with the material or with the equipment. He's like, well, this is what provided. I'm like, this is ridiculous. And so I'm arguing with him, and I'm telling him that this is not enough proof. I don't understand why you still have my water cut off, because I wanted it back on because my kids are coming this weekend. So some person, this big man out of nowhere, comes over and grabs my arm and says, "Mr. This is over with. You need to leave." And I don't know who this guy is, so I kind of move my arm away. He's a big dude, 6'4", 250, 260. So I start leaving because I just got out of jail and I don't want any more issues. So I'm leaving. And then as I'm walking out, he grabs my arm again and says, "You got to go." I said, "Listen, man, you put your arms on me again. You put your hands on me again, I'll be forced to defend myself." As soon as I say that, he grabs me and slams me against the wall. This other officer comes over who I recognize, it being Lieutenant Compton, who was sergeant back then, who's the internal affairs investigator, comes and slams me to the wall, and then they take me to the ground, and I heard my wrist snap. Ah! And I'm like, what are you arresting me for? They don't ask me. So what are you arresting me for? Oh, for noise. I'm like, noise? What are you talking about? Who's the complainant? Nobody. I said, well, and then they pick me up, they're dragging me down the hall. I'm like, what do you arrest me for? Oh, arrest me for trespassing. I said, trespassing? Did you give me a trespass warning? Crickets. I said, but I'm in a public place during normal business hours in a non-restricted area, and I have a reason to be here. I'm talking about water bill. Matt told me to come up here. Nothing. Drag me downstairs. They slam me to the ground. Drag me downstairs. They never articulate to me that the reason why they're arresting me per se, and there's no probable cause for what they're saying, a noise complaint, because there's no who's the complainant. Public officials can't be a complainant, and I wasn't committing a crime, and so they said trespass, and I hadn't been warned at all in a public building during normal business hours. How could you trespass me in a public building? And so they dragged me downstairs. They literally dragged me down the hall, throw me in an elevator, take me downstairs, and guess who's down there waiting, laughing? Chief Rodney Harrison's laughing. "Ha ha ha, Mr. Stark, yeah, we got you now." I'm like, "What for? What'd you arrest me for?" "Oh, cursing." Whatever. So my wrist is in incredible pain. My shoulder's numb. I didn't know why at the time. So they put me in a car to drive me 14 feet. It's funny how they're downstairs waiting for me. Kind of find out this is all set up. They had set me up. Compton and Chief Harrison, because I have their police report right here. I'm going to just briefly read it from Ward, because I know it's a long time, but this is important. This is showing the level of harassment and targeting and ridiculousness by the Denton County District Attorney's Office, namely Jesse Davis, Judge Shipman, and Chief Rodney Harrison, and Little Police Department. It says, on Tuesday, October 15th at 1450, I, Lieutenant Ward, was advised of a male subject over at the Town Hall of Little Elm, located at blah, 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 100 West El Dorado Parkway, Little Elm, Texas. I was advised that the subject at Town Hall was being argumentative with the town staff at the location. The same subject had been at the Town Hall the previous week, causing disturbance to himself and town employees. I was talking about my water bill. So he says that he never identified himself as a police officer. I had no idea who this gentleman was at all. Okay, his name is Lieutenant S. Ward, badge number 604. He says, I could visibly see through a glass door, and I was close enough to hear the conversation. Curious. Inside the office was Stark with this town secretary, Kathy Phillips, and the HR director, Deidre Haley. I did not intervene with the conversation that Mr. Mueller and Stark were having at that point. I remained outside the door and waited for Stark to complete his business in conversation with Mueller. During the conversation, Stark was being argumentative. How does he know that if he's outside the door, by the way? They can't hear anything. And refused to listen to what Mr. Mueller was trying to tell him. Mr. Mueller's a public servant, and I'm the public. He has a fiduciary duty, of providing information to the public. I'm the master. He's the servant. That's just period. That's the way it is. I don't have to listen to him. Okay? So at one point in the conversation, Stark told Mr. Mueller that he was raising his voice at him and told Mueller not to talk to him like that because Matt was yelling at me. And once again, how does Ward know all this, being outside the door? Mr. Mueller stepped back away from Stark and created a little bit of distance. Due to several recent interactions that Stark had with several of our officers in the police department, I felt that I should step into the doorway and make my presence known for safety concerns of town staff and Mr. Mueller. Now, mind you, a police officer's duty is and safety is to the public, to the citizen, not to themselves or any other public servant. Okay, mind you, he still doesn't identify himself as a police officer. I have no idea who this man is. Okay, so it says here, they're such idiots. I placed myself between Mr. Mueller and Stark for safety concerns and asked Mueller if he was finished with the conversation. Mueller advised me that he was done with the conversation. I asked Stark to step out of the door and advised him that it was time to go. Now, under what authority does he give me any directive? You know, what authority? He can't give me any direction. Plus, he's not identified himself as a police officer. This guy's in plain clothes, okay? I have no idea who he is. I thought he was an employee. I'm like, whatever, I had no idea who he was, okay? So here's the thing. I placed my hand, which is assault, okay? I placed my hand on Stark's right arm and asked him to step out and leave. Stark began arguing with me, stating that he did not have to leave. I asked Stark to step out and leave and that the conversation was over. Stark continued to raise his voice at me and slowly began exiting the door with me behind him. Lieutenant Compton was outside of the office and was able to record the interaction, but that footage mysteriously got lost. By the time he gets started in the area, he turned towards me and yelled at me, stating that if I placed my hands on him one more time, he would be forced to defend himself. Stark took a stance toward me and would not move back, which I don't have to. I took this action as a threat towards my safety as well as my own. At that point, Stark made an aggressive movement with his right arm, which I took that moment as he was going to try and assault me. Whatever. He's trying to intent. There's no intent there whatsoever. Now, mind you, he had already put his hands on me under the color of law. Now, when a police officer under the color of law does something that's not authorized by the state, then he loses his power immediately. So he's no longer a cop. He has no authority over me. He should have put his hands on me, period. Once he did that, he violated my constitutional rights. He violated the Constitution. He's no longer a cop from that point forward, all right? So he's talking about how I was being aggressive, whatever. He goes, I was trying to assault him, which is ridiculous. He had already assaulted me. He says, I placed my hands on Stark's body and used my body to place him against the wall. It's funny how he words that. What he means is he body slammed me against the wall, okay? He's like a hockey check. It didn't feel good. And it says, once against the wall, I advised Stark that he was not going to do that to me, but I don't know what the heck it means, do that to me, and that he had been asked and told to leave. They can't tell me anything. They can't ask me anything. They're public servants. While attempting to remove Stark from the building, now mind you, they still haven't told me I hadn't broken any laws, okay? I have not broken any laws. He's not identified himself as a police officer, and I had committed no crime. But they go hands-on right away. I have no idea why. No reason why, okay? It says, let's see here. Stark continued to resist me, which I'm not resisting because I'm not under arrest. He never told me I was under arrest. Didn't Mirandize me, didn't tell me why I was under arrest, didn't tell me what law I broke, didn't tell me why he had his hands on me. And then he says, I continue to twist my head backwards, blah, blah, blah. And then they threw me to the ground, trying to gain control. They have all these words here, okay? All these words about a false or unlawful arrest. They never say that I broke any law. They never said, well, we arrested Mr. Stark because he he assaulted anybody, which would be an injury. He threw a chair through the window, which would be, damage to property. He smoked crack in front of us, which would be a felony. I mean, they never had any reason for probable cause without warrants to arrest, but yet they arrested me anyway. Broke my wrist, take me down to their downstairs, and Chief Harrison's down there waiting for me, laughing. Ha ha ha. And he says, you're trespassing. I said, did you give me a trespass warning? Crickets. So you can't trespass. Like, you got to give me a warning first. Plus, I'm in a public building, and I have reason to be there. And so they find this amusing. They take me to the Little Police Department where there's a medic there, and looks at me, looks at my arm, looks at my shoulder, and goes, man, we get this guy to the hospital now. So as I'm sitting in this stupid jail cell again, that's when Chief Rodney Harrison comes over, and then he issues me a trespass warning and a trespass. They gave me a trespass warning and a trespass after they arrested me for trespassing. They arrested me for trespassing, and then they gave me a trespass and a trespass warning. Right there. After they arrested me for it. Without probable cause. And I didn't commit a crime. Dear Mr. Stark, because of your behavior, not anything articulated, in the recent past with regard to your visits at the Town of Little Elm Public Safety Building and the Town of Little Elm Town Hall, you are hereby criminally trespassed from these locations. This is an executive officer doing a judicial function. He can't, they enforce the law, they don't make them. Jackass. So, that was that. That was the whole October 15th. Now they arrested me again that day and took me back to Denton County. And I get to Denton County and the sheriff's like, what are y'all doing back here? I'm like, y'all wouldn't believe me if I told you. Like, okay, what happened? I said, I got arrested for trespassing before they trespassed me. And they were like, did you commit a crime? I'm like, no, I was there to talk about my water bill. Oh man, we don't know about that one. They kind of walked off. Go see the judge next day. Judge Ramsey says, you know, Stark, I don't know what's going on between you and Little Elm, but this is ridiculous. I'm looking at their affidavit and their police reports, and they say that you were exiting the building, being compliant with their orders, which are actually unlawful. You were being compliant. You were leaving the building, yet they arrested you anyway. I'll leave it at that. So the judge says they had a reason to arrest me. I know they didn't. Their police reports had a reason they arrested me, yet they did anyway. And here I am with a broken shoulder and a broken wrist. Yet the district attorney's office and Judge Shipley in the 16th Judicial Court in Denton County and assistant district attorney Jesse Davis they have 10 pending charges on me. Harassment of a public official twice because once, and then also assault because this Lieutenant Comp said I assaulted him, which is ridiculous. No proof of any of this, by the way, just their word. After they illegally arrested me, and then I have resisting arrest, a couple of resisting arrests, a couple of harassments, a couple of resisting arrests, and that it's just ridiculous the pending charges they have on me on unlawful and illegal arrests. And then on April 1st, driving in an area in Frisco, Texas, which is right next to Little Elm, literally right next to it, like a minute away. This guy in a Mustang is chasing me, and I don't know who this guy is. He's just tailgating me. So I pull in this Walmart parking lot to see what's going on with this guy, and he's asking me if I have a weapon. I'm like, what are you talking about? I said, no. And so I pull in the Walmart parking lot, and this guy pulls way away from me, and all these Frisco cops just like start surrounding this guy's car. I'm like, oh, this is not going to be good, So I'm thinking maybe they're going to see what's going on with this guy. Well, I get out of my car and I turn my phone on and start filming because I know how these people are. And so all these Frisco cops are this gentleman's Mustang who start chasing me, by the way, for no reason. I have no idea who this person is. I still don't to this day know who this person is. No idea who's their complainant. So they run from his car all the way to mine, and they look at my car, and this officer comes to me, hey man, which car are you driving? I was like, mind your fiduciary duties and leave me alone. It's like, hey man, whose car are you driving? I said, none of your effing business. Yeah, it is. I said, no. I said, am I under arrest? Are you being detained? I said, for what? He goes, for a possibility of weapons. I said, what weapon? Didn't answer. Hey man, what car is yours? I said, none of your business. It is my business. You're being detained. And 6 officers come and grab me, slam me to the ground, throw me in a car, take me to Frisco PD because of public intoxication BS with no proof of that, which is a Class C misdemeanor. Take me to this Frisco, put me in another one of those stupid chairs, strap me in this chair, put straps so hard on my right wrist, it snaps my right wrist, broken right wrist. And they have it across my chest and around my legs. It's actually some pretty cool, like G.I. Joe CIA stuff. But I'm strapped there and I can't breathe. And every time I take a deep breath, the strap gets tighter. And I can't breathe, and I can't breathe, and I can't breathe. I'm telling these idiots I can't breathe. And the police officers and the detention officers in Frisco walk by and they knock on this glass and they laugh at me. Hey, Stark, and they're laughing at me. And I can't breathe, like to the point where I said a goodbye prayer to my children. I really thought I was going to die. I thought I was going to die. And they arrested me. They said they had harassment, resisting arrest, which they always fall to, which is a crock of you know what, and public intox. And so I have pending charges for that as well. That's part of the 10. And the judge decided, the DA is prosecuting me on this, indicted me actually. I don't know how they got an indictment on all these charges. I looked up, there's not one single warrant. These are all on-site arrest, which I found out just Friday. That means their probable cause. They had said they had probable cause for warrantless arrest. Probable cause for warrantless arrest. There's exigent circumstances for probable cause for warrantless arrest on me driving, not breaking any speed limits, and didn't get pulled over for a traffic infraction. For me filming them, which is protected by the First Amendment. Me talking about and discussing my water bill, which they had no proof of, and I'm in a public building during normal business hours in a non-restricted area, and they arrest me for that. And then they arrest me for walking in a parking lot and the police officer approaching me, which is a due process violation, and arrests me for public intox, whatever. And then the stupid Frisco Police Department and their Internal Affairs Division, we had no, there was no finding. They didn't do anything wrong, even though they strapped me to a chair and broke my wrist and laughed at me and I couldn't breathe. And then they say that the police officer arrested me, they detained me, and then probable cause was found. They say that in a letter, and I have it. It's ridiculous. So that's the crux of what's really going on in Denton County and Little Elm and Frisco. Sorry the video is so long, but you guys have to know the details and why this is blatant targeting, racism, and by the Denton County District Attorney's Office, Jesse Davis, Judge Shipman, 16th Judicial, Little Elm Police Department, and Frisco Police Department. Y'all have a great weekend. And I'm getting buried in legal funds. I don't usually ask this, but if you guys can make a donation, I'd appreciate it too. I have a Cash App. It's $Starke, STRKE 1969 on the Cash App. Thanks a lot.